Abraham and Isaac were two very, very different personalities. So how could they be part of the same family? Let's explore that idea. Shalom, my friends. This is the Kiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. But if you have any questions or want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. In this week's Torah portion called Toldot, we learn at the very, very beginning that, of course, Avram had given birth to Isaac, not literally, obviously, but he was his father. Now, we already knew that fact, right? We learned about it in the previous sections of the Torah. So why is the Torah portion this week beginning with that? And it is to teach us a very interesting and very important lesson, that even though Abraham, or Avraham in Hebrew, was so different than Isaac, he was his father. And it was very possible that Isaac comes from him. And it shouldn't shock us that is the case, that a father and a son could be so different. Let's explore a little bit. What are some of those differences? Abraham, he was a spiritual wanderer and journeyer and seeker. He had this whole incredible life of starting in one place and moving to another place, looking for God, finding God, having an experience of God at the age of 75, and changing his entire life, following the voice of God and coming to the land of Israel. And then everything that happened after that. His life was a journey. His life was about exploring, about discovering, about searching, and about finding. And he is linked with the attribute. In Judaism, we say that Avram is linked with chesed, which is love and kindness, giving, right? He was always giving. He was always looking for people to help, spreading the word of God, spreading the word of monotheism, teaching people about his discovery, right? His tent had openings on all four sides, that so people, travelers, can come in more easily and sit with him, and he would give them food and drink and take care of them and show incredible hospitality. Along with that, sharing with them these teachings and these ideas that he had discovered on his own in his own life. That's a little bit of Abraham. Isaac, very, very different. He was born to Abraham. He was born in the house of Abraham and Sarah. He was already born into monotheism and the idea of one God. He didn't have to travel. He didn't have to wander. He didn't have to wonder. He didn't have to search. He didn't have to explore or discover. He was born in the land of Israel. He was born to the founders of monotheism, so to speak. He had it all presented to him directly, right? He never left the land of Israel. He literally never left the land of Israel. His life was so different in terms of attributes. We link Isaac with gevurah, which is more strength and restraining and not always giving everything to everybody, right? Having more limits and more boundaries. A very, very different life experience and very different attribute than his father, Abraham. So how is that possible? Right, so the Torah portion starts off with this line that says, Abraham gave birth to Isaac. Again, not literally, but this idea that yes, even though Isaac is very different, even though Isaac was going to be, and in the end was very different than Abraham, it shouldn't shock us, right? That could happen, right? One, parents and children are not always the same. Parents could be one way, and their children could be another, even though they are raised in the house in the same structure within the same four walls as their parents, teaching those values and those teachings and living that life. It's not only okay, but it's very possible. It's not only possible, but it's okay that the child is going to be very, very different. But it teaches us something deeper as well. That even though Isaac was very, very different than Abraham, who Isaac was, the attribute that he stood for, was still contained in Abraham, right? It still came from Abraham and Sarah, right? If not, then where did it come from, right? So even though they expressed something more, it doesn't mean that they were only that. It doesn't mean that they couldn't be anything else. We see that Abraham was very, very strong. He knew limitations. He knew boundaries. He was a warrior also, even though he was a peace-loving, always giving kind of guy. He was also a warrior. He went to war for his nephew Lot and defeated multiple kings at once. Right? So it wasn't that he was, the opposite of what Isaac stood for. He had that within him as well. He just expressed, he emphasized something different, and in his son Isaac was emphasized something else. Right, that sense of gevurah, as we say, that more strength attribute, and holding back and restraining, not always giving and knowing those boundaries a little bit more clearly. Right, so we see this is something we can take into our own lives. Sometimes people wonder in our modern day world, how is it that I'm my child's son or daughter? How is it that I'm my did I say that right? How is it that I'm my parents' child? How is it possible that I'm my parents' son or daughter? Right? Sometimes we think that we're so different than our parents, and it could be that that's absolutely correct, but it shouldn't be such a wonder how we came from them, right? Because we still got attributes of them, and attributes that we emphasize that are different than our parents still came from them. They're just a bit more hidden, maybe a lot more hidden in our parents' lives. The other thing I want to share with you briefly, a very interesting passage that we learn in this week's Torah portion, is that Isaac eventually goes out and he digs wells, right? Water is a major resource for all people of all times and all places, but especially in the land of Israel where there's not that much surface water, there's not that many rivers and lakes, right? So most of the water that people had in ancient times, and even in modern day times, this is true in the land of Israel, they had to dig, they had to find, they had to go down beneath the surface. And Isaac was digging wells, right, to find water. And the Torah says that he was digging the same wells that his father dug, right, when he was alive, but they were stopped up by their enemy, the Philistines. Right, so this is a beautiful metaphor that Isaac had to go back to those same places, dig in those same places, and find water. It wasn't enough that his father dug, revealed, and found water there. He had to do it too. He had to keep that work going, right? Not to only rely on what his father did, but to make it his own as well, to put his own effort, energy, and work into it. Even if I'm not going to the same places, oh, they're stopped up. All right, so the work that my father did lasted, in his lifetime. I have to go there and do the work for myself and reveal the same thing in my lifetime. I think there's a beautiful spiritual teaching there that we also can take into our lives. Wishing everyone a great rest of the week, a Shabbat Shalom, all the best, and be well.